Hey everybody, what's up? It's Booksy. Today is Wednesday, January 12th. This is going to be an update for AMC stock and for ATER. I'm going to be looking at both today because I think there is some useful information to be found by comparing them. So I'm going to start with AMC really quick. Just to give a brief overview of the day, we had a, excuse me, a bit of a drop in the morning. And it was mostly expected. I think going into today, I was thinking we probably were not going to see that push up to have the fractal finish in an upper range. It was more likely going to be flat or down, and I actually thought it would be more down than flat. And so it is what it is. We ended the day basically at flat. I mean, negative 0.3% is basically nothing. Now my chart's kind of messy here, and I know that that could be kind of obnoxious, so I apologize for the mess. But I'm looking at this thing in a few different ways, and I really want to have my my markers up for this. So basically, if you were to just draw a simple trading range here of like where have we spent the most time, you can just see really, I mean, I even like try hard, right? Like you can see we've spent a lot of time right here around 2280 and, a little bit up, a little bit down, so on and so forth. And yeah, I mean, there was a bulk of buying and stuff that happened down here, but the point I'm making is that we really, if you look at just the past week, I mean, we really just been flat. If you had went to sleep here on January 5th and woke up, a week later, you would be like, okay, nothing's happened. But that being said, that's the nature of a spring. And by spring, I mean like it's just a large liquidity test. I mean, and on the one hand, they can be very fast, and they should be. That's like a normal spring. But on the other hand, if it's an accumulation that's happening, we don't really want to call it necessarily a spring at that point, but that's kind of the way I've been thinking about it because fractals are weird like that, right? Like this dip right here is very fast and instantaneous, but the iteration that's going on down here is probably something that looks a lot like this. It's just happening on like a tiny time frame. So in order to help you all and to help me, I've been calling this a spring, but it's really just an accumulation at the end of the day. And it's only really a spring if you zoom way out, right? And you're looking at it from a macro perspective. So that being said, we're going to do a couple comparisons. We did end the day. We had our cat ears. We talked about that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically we were looking for these positions. This is December 13th through the 17th. We were looking for these cat ears to form today. We figured we were here, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, we got the cat ears. What we didn't get this nice succinct drop off the cliff here. We actually came up, we formed this top, and then we basically stopped there. So that was what happened right here. We came up, we formed the top, and then we just sort of stopped. When I saw this dip, I thought that was it. I was like, oh great, we're gonna go down, get that spring, and get out. And this is a midterm fractal, so we should push to at least a midterm level. I did the GAN measurements, and I don't know if you remember me doing that previously, but I learned that there was a specific way to do it, and I basically came up with like 2750 as like a possible target. I mean, and I know that that's neither here nor there. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, so you never know. But yeah, I mean, these are things that they're repeatable. Here, let me show you. They're repeatable patterns in AMC, and when you have a repeatable pattern that can be measured, it's probably a good idea to measure it. So this pattern right here. The expectation was that this was going to be our spring, so that's the reason I drew it the way that I did, at the intersection of the 618 and the 25, right around where I expected the spring to be. It didn't did not happen. It's just not very big. It was a weak spring. So that leads me to believe a couple different things. I think that the fractal has slowed a good bit, right? And then what we were expecting to have happen, which was basically like a repeat of whoa, 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 whoa. Thank you. Was like a repeat of this, essentially. That may not happen. It may not be the same thing, and I think that's a good thing because when this happened, I mean, went up and then it came right back down. And we may see something similar to that. We may run up, and we may not stay up forever and ever. We may end up coming back down and revisiting some regions before we move up again. There's a lot of possibilities here. I don't want people to be like pigeonholed into thinking like this has to happen one way. That's just not true. So, I mean, you look at the broad picture here. Yeah, I mean, look at this. We're on the 30-minute. We're not looking at the high details. We don't see the cat ears really. If you look at this, it just looks like a little bit of a wedge formation that has this massive drop right before a big run. And that's kind of where we're at, We've got this wedge formation. It's tightening, and we just waiting for that massive drop, and we didn't get it, not really today. And so I was looking at, I know I'm jumping around a little bit. I'm trying to move pretty quick today. I want to get you in and out of here because I don't think there's that much to talk about, but I wanted to mention a few things. So basically, this is where I got stuck at the end of the day. Just we didn't get the real spring, and this price action doesn't mean much to me. I don't really. I mean, there's volume, but it's probably just a fake out. And I think tomorrow what we're going to see is probably going to be a drop right off the morning. Maybe some reaccumulation very quickly, and then we'll start working our way back up. Whether or not it's explosive like it was on December 17th, or if it's more mild, that is yet to be seen. I will say this. I looked at SHIB, the comparison of SHIB, and as best I can tell, and this is not easy, okay, because SHIB is very different in this time region, but this was the region that I tracked a couple videos ago, and I talked about this setup here. I think it was yesterday, actually, or 2 days ago. I talked about the setup here and where I thought we were, quote unquote, and if you were looking just at the sequence, I think we did. I think we kind of ended the day right here, and yeah, I'm pretty confident about that. And if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, this would be your push down in the morning. And then you can see that these lines that I drew, I just tracked them 1-to-1 with what I could find as comparison in SHIB. And these fanning lines here, if this works out, we may not need to drop down all the way anymore to like the bottom of these arcs, whether or not the arcs are this extreme or if they're more flat. My initial thought was going to come down and hit this trend line right here, and then at lowest that 2130 area. But it's possible that we stay just like SHIB did and we start doing our ramp. And this ramp looks a lot like January, it looks a lot like June. We have ramps in both, and these are basically ascending accumulations until they break out of the range. So you can see that an ascending accumulation here, if we went down to like 2240 and then started to sort of move up from there, that once we break, let's say this mid-range, whenever that happens, it looks like in this case on SHIB, it happened kind of an arbitrary level, this volume spike. More than likely, they would use this range right here for that. So yeah, I mean, as you coast upward, so this is the 13th, which is tomorrow, the 14th. It would be very difficult for them to not at least get up here on the 14th, Friday. But if they did break above it, I could see it going up to this particular level right? And this would be your SOS basically for the region. I know technically this is the high point, and I do think this is significant, but I think it's going to set up beneath it to break it. I know that sounds really weird, but that's just my thought right now. So I could see this ramping instead of just going down and then rocketing straight up. I could see the ramp, the ascending accumulation happening just because I'm seeing it all over AMC and I'm seeing it other places. There's a couple things I wanted to bring up at the end of the video today. So number one, yeah, we talked about this, but I've been thinking a lot about these horns. I also call them like cat ears. I like that better. A little more cute. But they do look like little cat ears. So I've been thinking a lot about these cat ears, and I've been thinking about whether or not we've actually seen them on the AMC macro. And my first thought was no, I don't think we have, because I thought, at least the way that I had described these, that this was the bridge. Ignore all my little notes here. Let me see if I can get a cleaner chart. You can see it a little bit better. My understanding of this sequence is based on looking at all the different quote unquote spring fractals that I could find. And so I believed that this and this were the two different towers and that this was the bridge between them. And to some degree, I think that's a possibility still. It's also possible that this is actually the bridge between the two towers, and then basically these would be the two towers, and then this would be your cat ears, right? And this is the final dip before the rip. The difference here is pretty critical though, because depending on how you interpret it, it could make a very significant difference in how you end up, where you end up believing, we are in this sequence. I think the big kicker comes down to this region right here that I'm pointing at. And by the way, I'm not talking about like, oh, you have to go back here and like it's not. It's a little bit of a puzzle, right? But it's not like I'm saying. It's how we interpret this region, okay? Because I've seen this region a few different times and a few different fractals, and we just experienced it yesterday and today, and it looks different each time, but I haven't quite put my finger on it yet. And what I'm saying is that in the macro, the larger picture here, this region, which goes from December 17th to, January 3rd, it's like 2 weeks. At first I thought it looked a lot like, this whole region. And I think that's a possibility. But then it kind of dawned on me that it's a really bizarre looking play of this region, because normally, do you see how this spikes out of the range? That's really common. And that's exactly what happened right here. And so it made me think, to me anyways, that this was indeed, this was the kind of the bleed down, and then this would have been the first cat ear. And so then the question is, well, where is the second cat ear? And this is no longer, you can't consider this the bridge, right? Like these aren't the two towers. That wouldn't make any sense. So it's just kind of a confusing thing. Like when you look at the stock and you look at the macro fractal and you compare it to some regions, these look more evidently like the two opposing towers. When you look at this particular region, it's easier to make this comparison, in my opinion. But there's also a whole lot of evidence. This is just one of those things that it's starting to get muddied. And so what I'm going to do is I want to come back to it later, and just sort of not address it right this second, because I don't like putting stuff out there that I'm not pretty confident about, or at least at the time, confident about. I don't want to mislead people, but there is the possibility that the cat ears are not done. And if the cat ears are not done, then we have to deal with possibly 2 cat ears, right? Which means that whether or not we set it up, I would think it would be in this region right here. And that precludes this idea of like we would just blast through. Like if obviously we blast through, we go to like $30, in a week. Then I'm not going to be looking at this the same way. But right now, my big concern is where are they? Is this the second cat ear? And if it is, great, because that means that we're out of here after this, right? But if not, then we have a bigger problem. And I looked at ATER a bit today to compare, and looked at the fractals, and I compared them to like where we are currently, and you can kind of ignore these boxes. ATER is not is a very ugly chart. I mean, it just is. It's really hard to see all the fractal sequencing in here. On the one hand, I was like, oh, this looks like the cat ears, surely that's it. It has that flat, here's that cat ear 1, here's this cat ear 2, and it drops down into the spring. But then I looked at this and I was like, well, you kind of get the same shapes here. And based on where the fractals are, you get the, it almost makes more sense if they were lower. So this is just a possibility, and I don't want to waste your time by just going around in circles on this, but this is a possibility that the cat ears did form lower, and they're actually right here, and that we're just waiting for that final kind of like dip and then run up into an ascending accumulation. If that's the case, if these are the cat ears, and I'm going to have to do some more digging, then that could be that these are the cat ears. That looks really weird, right? It doesn't look like it would make a lot of sense, but it is what it is. I mean, we have to just sort of, excuse me, take it with a grain of salt and say, for right now, we're not sure, but what we are sure of is that we're trading in these particular pockets on ATER and on AMC. They're both set up in a situation where they probably are going to see some down, and then they're going to start that ramping accumulation. That's the most likely scenario at this point. So that being said, I am excited to sort of get to the bottom of the macro moves here, and I want to make sure that I'm pretty clear about that before I present it again, because I presented the macro in another video, and now I'm sort of thinking that maybe that wasn't correct. I guess I took things at face value, and sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. So I just want to be clear before I come back. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. We're just stuck in this like never-ending story of springs and fractals. It just seems like they keep dragging it out. But look, if we're really only a couple days away, and by Monday we're kind of finally moving out of here, I'll be happy. As much as I like seeing those big, huge booms, explosive moves, I'm patient, and I know that it'll happen when it's time to happen. And if it looks more like this over a couple days, then that's not a big deal. It'll be okay. I know it stinks. Maybe it feels like it's not fun, but this is like the messiest chart right here. But yeah, I mean, we just gotta take it in stride, and flat is just flat, At least we're not like down here just constantly going down still. And we know the expectation coming out of this should be upside. Whether we have cat ears or not, up is still the next big move. So that being said, hope you all enjoyed it, and I will talk to you later.